I have a problem. No matter where I look, I can't find an Alucard figure that actually looks like Alucard. So I think it's about time I accept the challenge and make my own. We all know the drill by now. We gotta paint all those pieces I printed. I will say this is typically the boring part of the video, but there was a plot twist this time. We'll get to that in a little bit. For now though, we can just go to something normal, right? Like the head. Actually, no we can't. Can you spot the mistake I made here? Things kept going wrong with his head, and I had to print it about 3 times. But once he finally decided to stop messing around and cooperate, I painted his head with a few watered down layers of his custom skin tone. So at this point, you'll start to notice a theme with this video, because I had to repaint his face 4 times and blush his torso twice. Yeah, it got rough, but I won't bore you with watching the same thing over and over again, so we'll just pretend that this was, the first time I was doing this. Fortunately, I didn't have to redo this part multiple times, which is Alucard's scar. I sketch it out with a pinkish gouache paint, then go on the inside of that line with a very pale pink. Just paint alone was looking a little too stiff, so I played around a bit with some chalk pastels. Looking back at this, I really should have moved his scar over just a little bit, but I'm still really happy with how it turned out. His hands are actually going to be painted black, and this is because of his gloves. There was no way I was going to sew gloves for hands this small. Now onto his face. Once I get the layers of paint and my Mr. Super Clear to play together nicely, I do the first layer of blushing. This time around, I'm focusing on adding some realistic skin color shifts like blue around the corner of the eyes and a mix of blue and red under the eyes. Yes, I know blue and red make purple, but I didn't use purple chalk pastels directly. 1, because that just lacks depth, and 2, it'll just look like makeup. For reference, I'm basically following how these dolls are blushed. I'm not someone who tends to aim for hyper-realism, but adding just a bit more realistic detail to the skin is just really nice. And this is something I really want to mesh into my own style. His eyes, just like Dracula's were some of the smallest I've ever done. But with the little iris modification I've started adding to my dolls, they were actually pretty fun to paint. I protect the paint job with Mr. Super Clear, then coat them in a thin layer of UV resin. Before we put them in, I found these perfect eyelashes in my stash, so of course I have to add them. And this is how his face turned out. I love his face. He's looking so much like Alucard already. At this point, I've also added the paperclip hook, which I'll use to hold the elastic later. Okay, this time around, I'm doing something a little bit different for the wig. I at first threw away this idea because I was convinced it wasn't going to work, but my teacher brought it up again in one of my classes, so I decided to give it a try. I'm going to 3D print the wig cap out of resin. Unfortunately, this worked really well. But because it's really thin, I still use my wood glue and mesh trick to reinforce it and fill in some holes I kind of poked through. One of my next dolls has some horns, and this would be a lot easier to navigate around them. I juggled between using yarn and the same hair I used for Prairie Warrior. The synthetic hair was just slightly a better color in comparison to the skin, so that's what I'm using. Am I nervous about styling it? Yes. But am I a perfectionist and refuse to give him the wrong hair color? Also yes, so here we go. I'm just slapping this stuff on and really trying not to worry about the hairline too much. That's usually the part I have trouble with. I'm gonna go ahead and be a little mean and leave the result for the end, so for now, let's move on to his clothes. His clothes are really simple, and most of it is repeated from my last video with slight differences. So his pants. At this point, we all know how to make pants, so here's the pants. I make a slight modification to them later, which you'll see why soon enough. His shirt is like a t-shirt, but of course with that V-neck down the front panel, so I add that and make sure to hem it. By the way, I'm using a gauze fabric for this. This makes it so it looks a little worn and just adds some depth. For his jacket, I'm using the same pattern I used for Dracula, only making the necessary changes to fit Alucard. In this case, I'm just extending it and rounding off the edges. To line it, I'm using this golden satin, and for the edge, I make sure to add extra fabric so that I can just fold over the edges and create that clean line going around the entire coat. At this point, the only thing left are his shoes. Fun fact, I hate making shoes. I hate thinking about making doll shoes. I zone out while watching a video on how to make doll shoes. Heels? Maybe. But boots? Absolutely not. At first I thought I was just going to force myself to do it, but I lost patience and decided to sculpt and 3D print them. Which means I have to reprint the lower part of the leg, but I'm completely fine with that. Trust me, completely fine. I go into Blender to whip up the model really quick. To help speed things up a bit, I use this file from Thingiverse and completely transform it and turn it into this. Once I'm done printing them, I can just go ahead and paint them like normal, instead of having the full-on stress attack from making them out of fabric. There's a giant gap in between the actual leg and the shoe itself because this will allow me to tuck in the fabric of the pants into the shoe and make everything just flow together seamlessly. Now with that out of the way, let's look at how he turned out. Alucard and Dracula are my favorite characters in Castlevania, and I'm really glad I finally got time to make them this year. Tell me who your favorite character is in the comments. Like always, thanks for watching, stay sweet, and I'll see you next time.